Is tracing cheating? Let's talk about why it can be good and bad depending on the situation. The idea of tracing has always been a little bit hard to come to terms with for me. There are some times when it can be really, really helpful and, in fact, maybe even necessary, and other times when it's just a really, really terrible idea. Let me back this up with a story. When I was in high school, I lived in the same town as a very famous artist. I became friends with this guy. Just amazing opportunity. And I would go to his house sometimes to get help with my art. And one time when I was there, he told me that he had received a commission from a large corporation to do, I don't remember exactly now, but 15 to 20, maybe even more paintings, large paintings, very large paintings. And they wanted him in a pretty short amount of time. But he had a projector shining on his canvas, and it was, I can't remember the kind of projector. This was like 25 years ago now. It was probably one of those opaque projectors, if you remember those. But he was projecting his drawing onto this big canvas. And he explained to me that there's no way he could have done those in that amount of time. And, you know, partially that's probably how he got the job rather than someone else. Well, okay, that's one of those situations where it's okay to trace. First of all, it was his own work, whether his drawing or painting, small painting, or his photographs that he had taken himself. So he was just transferring his ideas to canvas. And here's the real reason it's okay. Hey, that other reason right there that I just gave you, that's like, even that depends, right? But he already knew how to draw, and that's the point. He's many decades older than I am, a lot of experience under his belt, a very, very good artist. He could draw anything, but drawing takes time. So to save time, he traced, right? Okay, so that's one situation where it's okay. I would caution so strongly against doing it yourself, though, most of the time. See, there's like, it's so easy to take a concept like this and give a quick answer, but there are so many nuances to every answer to artistic questions like this. It always depends. So here's another situation where I've discovered that it's actually okay. And this is something that I wouldn't have said was okay until 3 or 4 months ago. And the reason being that my 13-year-old son has just gotten into art. He is so excited about it, and he started with basically no knowledge of it at all. He just one day said, I want to draw. I want to be a good artist. He was kind of hinting at it before he just kind of disappeared into his corner of the house and just, 3 weeks later emerged as a pretty good artist. And he's grown quite a bit since then. But one of the things he did is actually trace. In fact, that's the first thing he did. He chose a picture off the internet that he wanted, and he did this many times. He would put his paper over the screen of he was using an iPad, and trace one part, and then try to draw without tracing, and then he'd put it back and see how wrong he was. And once I heard his process, at first I'm like, oh, you traced it? Oh, darn. I kind of felt, I'm like, oh, I want to encourage him, but I don't want to encourage that. But then when I heard his process, I thought, actually, he's got it right. That's the right way to do it. And yes, it can become a crutch. In other words, if you just trace, you won't get better at drawing. But if you trace a little bit to see where you've gone wrong, and if it's done with the intention of teaching yourself to get better, then it's good. Not just okay, but very good. And then I realized that I did a kind of a version of this when I was starting out, when I was just out of high school. It was common for artists to use slides. A lot of you may not know what slides are, but they were just little miniature transparencies, full color transparencies, just a see-through picture. And in order to, it's so small that in order to see it, you have to stick it into this little thing with a magnifying glass and a piece of plastic behind it that was semi-translucent, and you'd hold it up to the light like this. And then, so that's what you're looking at, and then you'd paint or draw what you see with one eye, and then you know, sometimes one eye like that. Anyway, so I sort of, I'm sure plenty of artists did this, but I sort of invented for myself this way of looking at it and lining it up so that it matched the sight size of my canvas. So if it was a big painting, I'd have to get further away from it, and if it was a small painting, I could get up close. But I'd be looking at this image right there with one eye and literally tracing what I was doing with the other eye. And that was a long process, I'll tell you what, because for the big paintings, I'd have to get way back and then go up and sketch, and then check my work and go up again and sketch. So I wasn't, if it happened to be in arm's length, you know, that size, then I literally was tracing. And I didn't do this all the time, but I used it as a method to check my work, and I didn't remember that I had done that, or didn't realize that it was tracing at the time. I was just using it as a tool to help me get a little bit faster. So bringing it all around, should you trace? Should you individually trace? Well, if you are determined to get better at drawing, then I've given you the key. Tracing can be used to check your work. That's the way to do it right. If you're being lazy, and you know if you are, and you can instantly change this thought pattern. But if you have been lazy up to this point, then you probably find yourself tracing to save time, and because you're embarrassed about putting out something that doesn't quite look right. So I would encourage you, if you're in that camp of thought, if you're just tracing because you're not quite good enough yet, and again, you know if you are, and it's better if you can tell yourself that rather than have somebody else have to tell you that. So I'm not telling you personally, I don't see you. You can make this own choice for yourself. But if you want to change that kind of, I'll call it laziness, because it kind of is. If you want to change that laziness into the proper way of utilizing that method or that tool, then simply just kind of step back away from that a little bit, from that pure tracing method. In other words, get yourself to draw something by looking at it. You know, maybe you traced, if you were doing a portrait, maybe you traced where the shoulders are, and maybe you put where the top of the head and the bottom of the chin are. Just, you marked it, you know, just put little tiny marks there, right there, just little dash mark, and then a little dash mark. You can't see my chin, but so maybe it's the bottom of my beard there. And maybe points on my shoulders, okay? And then get yourself to not trace for a minute. If you're just using that for like little tiny points of reference, I think that's okay, as long as you're pushing yourself to try from that point, going back to that example, you do maybe the sides of my head, but then you let go of that and you try to find where my eyes are in relation to the top of my head versus the bottom, and you know, you're kind of just like trying to find that right placement. And then I would challenge you to not go check your work right away, but see if you can find the bottom of the nose and then where the mouth is in relation to that. And at that point, I mean, if you can push yourself further, that's even better. But then go back to your tracing element, however you were doing it, and see if you got it right. And then make some notes to yourself. Do I need to make those eyes higher? And don't just trace at that point. Just make notes to yourself of what I should have done differently. Does that make sense? Why that's different? Because tracing is your brain turning off. You're just following along. You're not thinking about anything. You're not doing any work. Your brain is not strengthening its ability to do this thing. It's kind of like a muscle. The brain is not a muscle, but our mental muscle, if you want to call it that, needs to be stretched by forcing it to do a little bit of work. If we were to start out lifting weights, having never done it before, Would you instantly go to 20 pounds? Probably not. You probably wouldn't be able to if you'd never lifted weights before. You'd probably start out with, say, 2.5 pounds, and do as many curls as you can, and then push yourself just a little bit more. And those of you who exercise know that the pushing yourself just a little bit more than you think you're able to is the real key to growth. So in tracing and doing art in general, if you can push yourself to do just a little bit more than you think you're able to, in other words, go completely out of your comfort zone, risk putting those eyes and the nose and the mouth in the wrong place in your portrait, and then go back and see how you could have done better. And then don't trace again, but go, tracing is kind of like, having somebody else lift that weight while you're doing this. It's not doing anything for you. Sure, you're going through the motions, but it's not helping you. I hope that all these analogies make sense. They make sense as I say them, but anyway, if you can get yourself to just stretch a little bit, go beyond your abilities a little bit, and then use tracing only as a check to see how far you need to change, you'll get better. And that's the goal. Let me say this too. One of the things that really led me to want to be better and better in my art is I had this healthy fear of, what if somebody asks me to draw something for them? Will I be good enough to draw that? And when I was tracing this way, this slide way, I don't think I was good enough at drawing people that I could have done it without helps like that. And I was constantly in fear of that. When I chose right after high school to want an art career, I wanted to be an artist, I started thinking of all the things that I can't do very well. And I wanted to be so good that I could come off as a professional in any situation. And I wanted to be in galleries. And so that idea, that goal really pushed me to get out of my comfort zone quickly and to want to be able to draw people from life. If a gallery wanted me to do a demonstration in front of a live audience from a live person, I wanted to be able to do that. Or a lot of times galleries would have artists come in and have one of their little sketches or a photograph that they had taken, and then demonstrate their abilities in front of an audience. And I wanted to be able to do that and not have any cheats. I didn't want to have to come in there with my thing already sketched out or something. That's a dead giveaway. And whether it's a dead giveaway or not was besides the point. It wasn't for the other people, and it shouldn't be for you too. It shouldn't be about how do you come off to other people. It should be more about you. Do you want to learn this skill of being an artist? I admit it's hard, as everything is, that you want to get better at. But if you push yourself even just a little bit at first, don't worry that you're not making tons of progress immediately. But the harder you push yourself, and the more you step into the dark, so to speak, and then, then you can rely on helps a little bit, and then step into the dark a little bit further. You'll experience the joy that comes with just getting better. Or if you're a brand new, total beginner, you'll experience the joy of picking up a skill that you didn't know before. You always can see my bass guitar back here. I dabble in music. I play many instruments. And when I dabble in music, I don't get much better. But when I sit down and really force myself to, say, learn a song, I like the Beatles, for example, and I'll try to learn an entire song instead of just the one riff that's really famous or the one that it's really fun to play. I'll push myself to learn the bass line of that entire song. And it's absolutely, completely exhausting. I feel like doing nothing else the rest of the day because I'm just mentally exhausted. But I also feel so happy, pleased that I was able to do something that was difficult. And that joy that comes from accomplishing something hard is is absolutely worth the work involved. So anyway, I hope this is encouraging to you. So feel free to use those apps or those projectors or the iPads as tools, but just be careful not to let it become a crutch. All right. If you want to sign up for my email newsletter, go to my website, trentgoodmanson.com. Be sure to spell it correctly. And you can also see the work that I'm doing and be notified of workshops and classes that I may be doing in the future. All right. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope you have a great day. Bye.